Hi everybody, it's Annette from The Art of Intuition, and today we're going to talk about our energetic boundaries and how we might be overstepping them and not realize it. Now, this is something that's come to my attention that I have been doing, and I usually only thought about energetic boundaries kind of one way. So I want to circle around that a little bit and talk about how many different ways we can be overstepping our energetic boundaries and not realize we're doing it. Normally, I talk about this in the sense of overstepping our energetic boundaries and how we interfere with people, like telling people what to do, trying to overcompensate for things that are going on. Our energetic boundaries are when we I always think of it kind of like that scene in Dirty Dancing when he's talking about, you don't come into my space, I don't come into your space. It's kind of the same thing. You kind of put a hula hoop around yourself, even though your energetic field technically goes up way farther than a hula hoop. But put the hula hoop around and look at everyone else's hula hoop and look where you're stepping into other people's hula hoops, telling them what to do. Any conversation that you start that begins with, you should do this, you're overstepping your bounds. If someone is not asking your opinion and you're giving an opinion, you're overstepping your bounds. If someone's not asking for your opinion, why are you giving it? This one comes up a lot when I'll get people asking why, certain people aren't following their advice on something. And the one question I'll always ask them is, well, did they ask for your advice? If they didn't ask for your advice, why are you giving your advice? And sometimes that's one that'll catch me, where someone won't really ask, but I'll still kind of get my advice in there a little bit. So there is something I tend to have to kind of pull myself back on and go, what are you doing? No one asked your opinion on something, so don't give it. And there's a couple different reasons for that. One, they're not going to be in a place to hear it. They're not open to hearing it. If they're open to hearing it, they would have asked you for it. If they're not asking you for it, it doesn't matter. It's going to fall on deaf ears. And that's one thing that sometimes I remind myself of when I actually want to say something, say more than you should in a sense. So just watch when you're starting to do those things. And there's another one that can kind of creep up on us where we're trying to overcompensate. And that's kind of the one I was falling into a little bit, where I'm trying to do more than, and this can kind of tie back into self-worth too. So we kind of got to look at this in a lot of different ways. If you're overcompensating because you don't want to be judged by what you're about to do, so you're trying to maybe give a lot, like if you're closing out a reality, and to close out that reality, you're giving a lot on your end to close out the reality, because there's this fine line where we want to close it out in this highest place, and if that takes money to do that, and we have the money to do that, we're going to do that. It's not about the money. It's about how we energetically close something out. But if we're overcompensating because we don't want to be judged for closing out the reality, so now we start overcompensating on what we're doing. And when we start overcompensating on what we're doing, we have to kind of look at, is that because we don't want to be judged? That's one thing. That was kind of what I was doing when I was trying to close one out. I was overcompensating, but sometimes when we overcompensate, we're giving too much, whether it's too much money, too much time, and it's energetically we're giving too much. And we might be hampering a process this other person has to go through. We're making it too easy. Like if we know they're not really go-getters and we're ending a reality, I'm just going to use the word go-getters because that's the one I got, came to me. So, but they're really not motivated. They procrastinate, they don't do things quickly. If, you might have asked for something, them to assist you with something, and you always assisted them. And when it came time for them to assist you, they really didn't do that. And now you need to close out the reality because it's not aligned anymore. And now you're kind of overcompensating by making it very easy for them to keep procrastinating. If we go with the same example, which is kind of what I was doing. Making it very easy for them to keep procrastinating. Make it very easy for them to not really having to deal with anything. That could be, and on a lot of levels it's going to be, hampering their ascension process. It's kind of giving them an out where they're not having to step up. And normally when they don't have to step up, they're just going to keep creating the same realities. So it's kind of like we've had this realities where we always say, sometimes the train has to hit people, because that might kick off their awakening process process or their ascension process. And if we keep trying to shield everybody from that, we're not doing anybody any favors. So that's another way we can be kind of overstepping our bounds. That wasn't one I really saw very clearly, because sometimes I have a tarot deck that I designed, and sometimes I'll pull cards in it if I'm trying to close out a reality or really looking at stuff I know has to go, and I just kind of want just something to kind of just tangible to look at sometimes. If I feel like I've got too much emotion around something to clear. And that was a card that kept coming up, overstepping your energetic boundaries. And I'm like, how am I doing that? I'm so careful, you know, with what I do as far as advice, and so careful as what I do with other people to not do that. But there was a situation where I was kind of overcompensating and trying to do that because I didn't want to be judged with what I was about to do. Even though I knew what I was about to do was highest in line for everyone involved, I had a judgment about it and how it would be perceived. And because of that, I wanted to overcompensate in other ways. If you're overcompensating to close out a reality, and you're doing it from a place of not wanting the judgment of closing it out, that's kind of going to be the key here. If it's the judgment of not wanting, the judgment of having to close out the reality. And you don't want that. So you're trying to make it super easy, where maybe the other person doesn't have to do anything, or the other person doesn't have to, actually show up and do anything. You see, I'm shooting this at night. I usually don't shoot anything at night. The cat is, I guess, doesn't like to be ignored this time of night. So just look at when you're doing that. You know, just pay attention to where. Are you overcompensating, overstepping your bounds in more of a direct way? Or then we can also be doing it in an indirect way. Look at the energy behind why you're doing something. And if it is a judgment reason, where you don't want to feel the judgment, remember that's our own judgment. People can't judge us if we don't judge ourselves. If we don't hold judgment, we cannot be judged. If we're feeling judgment, that's our own judgment on what we're about to do, or what we know we have to do, or maybe what we just did. That's our own judgment. So just take a look at that, because energetic boundaries are something we all have to kind of put our line in the sand on, but then eventually you don't really need your line in the sand on anymore, because you just don't cross the line. You don't go into someone else's space and they don't come into your space, because the minute someone comes into your space, you shut it down immediately, in a sense. If they are overstepping their boundaries, you just immediately shut that down. And you'll tell them, you know, you're kind of overstepping your boundaries. That's the wording I will use quite a bit. It's like you're overstepping your boundaries. This is not yours to do or yours to say. So just look at the interactions you have with people and look at where you might be overstepping. Because there's a part of us that wants everyone to live, you know, the most amazing life they can live. And we feel like we can kind of show them how to do that. But we kind of have to show by example of how we treat them and how the life we live, and not try to kind of drag them this way or saying, you should do this, you should do this. Like I said, if we're starting at anything with you should do it, right away, the door is going to be shut, and it should never be said that way, because it's what we want them to do. Start looking at what you want someone to do, not what they're actually doing, and look at where you're trying to kind of push in one direction or the other, because that's a big sign we are overstepping our bounds. Our boundaries are just kind of very clear. If someone, for me, I have to look at their reality, and I've kind of stopped closing out that reality that I was about to close out, because I had a lot of judgment about what I was going to have to do, and I was trying to overcompensate. So I just kind of pulled back on the close out of the reality until my energetically I could align that within myself before I went forward. And sometimes we have to do that. We have to take a step back, because the energy in which we close it out is the most important thing. You know, and we can try to close it out when we're in a lot of these other places, but we're not going to get what we want out of it. You know, it's not going to happen that way, because we're not, cat's laying on the computer, because we're not giving ourselves the energy we need to get a timeline that's not karmic, a timeline that's not going to come back and bite us in the bum later, because we had judgment of what we had to do, or we overcompensated in the sense of now we're trying to scramble to do all this stuff we promised we would do when we didn't have to do that. And like I said, we're not promising to do it because we want to do it. Are you promising to do it because you don't want judgment for closing out the reality? And that's where I was setting. And technically that's overstepping my boundaries, because they might need it to be a certain way. You know, if I try to do everything and make it really easy, maybe I'm not supposed to make it as easy on them, because they'll just procrastinate and sit around and not do anything, which is a pattern I've seen continuously from these people. So that's just a quick one on energetic boundaries. Really take a look at it, okay? And I'm going to go pay attention to this cat before he, goes crazy. So sweet. Now that the dogs are no longer here and they went back, my dog sitting experience was over. Now the cats get all the attention. So, okay. Keep practicing the art of intuition.